Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for my interview with Laura Watkinson, the translator of The Golden Cage. This book was illustrated by Cneut and written by Anna Castagnoli. It was published by us, Book Island, and co-funded by Creative Europe. Laura, thank you so much for joining me from the Netherlands, which is where you've been living for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
When I founded Book Island 10 years ago, you were there with me. You translated 2 books for us back then, and I think you've translated 5 books in total for Book Island.
Yeah, it's 5, and I can't believe it's 10 years ago now. It seems to have gone by so quickly.
I know. What does a translator do exactly?
Well, a translator takes the original book, internalizes the ideas in the book, and then tries to recreate the book in another language. So you're not talking about a literal translation. One word means this, one word means that. You're looking at the ideas in the book and how they go together with the pictures. If it's a picture book, that's something else you have to think about. And you have to think about jokes. Sometimes they work in one language, but not another language. And sometimes when you're working with a picture book, you have to think about how do those words work with the pictures as well. So there's that interaction to think about. And what you're trying to do is to create the same sort of experience for the reader in the language that you're translating into as the reader would have had of the original book.
What languages do you translate from?
I translate mainly from Dutch. I do a little bit of German and Italian as well. And very occasionally I translate from Frisian, which is the language that they speak in the north of the Netherlands.
How did you become a translator?
I was a complete language nerd at school. I loved studying English, reading books all the time. And when we actually got the chance to study languages at school, I was just like, this is the best subject ever. So I did French and German at school and then started picking up other languages as I got older. And then I moved into translation because it seemed like the obvious choice for somebody who was a keen reader, who was keen on languages, keen on traveling. You know, it's a job that you can take with you wherever you live.
What's the best way to learn a foreign language?
I would say that the best way to learn a foreign language is to be born in a situation where you're going to be speaking a couple of languages, and then you have such an advantage. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's such an advantage to be coming from that situation. When I think of the effort that I had to put into learning different languages, I started probably when I was 10, 11. And I think it's a little bit too late sometimes. I wish I'd have had that opportunity to grow up with the 2 languages. But other than that, I would say it's great to be in a situation where you're surrounded by the language. I live in the Netherlands now, so I'm hearing Dutch every day. And I make sure that I keep my other languages up as well.
What skills do you need as a translator?
You have to have patience, I would say. You have to work with the book for a long time, so you really have to love it and to be happy working with it for that length of time. You also, I would say, you definitely have to be a reader. I still love reading children's books. I read a lot of children's books in English as well as in the foreign languages. And I think that it sort of keeps me in touch with the language and keeps me in touch with what people are reading, what younger readers are reading. And it's fun.
How did you get started on The Golden Cage?
With The Golden Cage, I read it and I loved it. And when I start working, I always do a quick, rough draft and it's very rough. I leave a lot of the original language in with slash marks and question marks. And I think about, at that point, what is going to be tricky? What are the puns? Are the things that aren't going to work? What I'm going to do with this? So yeah, I do that first version to sort out what the rough parts might be. And then I go back through it and back through it and back through it, polishing, refining, talking to other people about it, bouncing ideas around.
It sounds like a long process. Shall we have a quick look at the original text and your translation of the first page? We will see on the left your translation, and then the original text in in Dutch. Maybe I should start with reading the text in Dutch, which happens to be my mother tongue. So, de dochter van de keizer heette Valentina. Ze was onuitstaanbaar. Ze bezat 390 paar schoenen, 812 hoeden en 50 riemen van slangenleer. Ze gaf heel veel om haar spullen, maar bovenal hield ze van vogels. Would you like to read your translation?
The emperor's daughter was called Valentina, and she was a nightmare. She had everything her heart desired, but still she was not happy. She had 390 pairs of shoes, 812 hats, 50 snakeskin belts. She liked the things she owned, but most of all, she loved her birds.
Wonderful. It's interesting to look at the two pages and see how in Dutch we seem to need less words than in English. And that's something that happens in many translations. Every language needs more or less words. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I tend to find that my English translations turn out longer than Dutch ones, because quite often in English you'll have a phrase where in Dutch you might have just one single word for it. So you'll end up with 3 words in the English and 1 word in the Dutch. And sometimes there's, it works the other way around. There's a neater way of phrasing it in English than there is in Dutch.
What happens once you've finished your translation?
I don't like to talk about finishing translations because they always feel slightly open to me. I suppose when they're on the page, that's it, finished. But I always see things that, think, could I have done that differently? But the immediate thing is I send it to the publisher, I send it to you, and then I work with the editor, who would be another native speaker of English. And we talk about, does the text work? Are there different ways I could do things? Do they have any suggestions for things that I've found tricky? We bounce ideas around. And then in your case, it was great also because you could become involved in the process because you understand the Dutch, and you could look at the 2 translations alongside each other, and we could also talk. So there was a bit of a 3-way conversation there with you, me, and the editor.
It was wonderful.
And then, of course, it goes on to the designer, and that's another process as well.
Yes. And once we have put your translation in the files, we will look at your translation again in correlation with the artwork. And let me just show you. I'll show you the title page from the book. In Dutch, still, you can see it looks very different. It was hand lettered by the illustrator Carll Cneut. His name is here. And so that you can still see it was translated by someone else and published by the Eenhoorn, which is a publisher in Belgium. And let's have a look at what our edition looked like after a first edit. Here we go. So you see, it's we still don't have the hand lettering here, but everything is in place. So we've got the name of the author, the illustrator. We've got Laura, your translation of the title, And then here you are. And we've also added Book Island as the new publisher of the English translation. And then we sent that to the book designer, the graphic designer, who tidies it up and makes it really pretty. So she, her name was Vida Kelly, and she found some really good fonts for us. And you can see that the fonts are very different. So she had a different font for the illustrator and the author, and for you. And then she picked a beautiful font for the title. And then this is our own font. And look, this is what it looked like then in your translation. So this was the finished file, the file that we sent to the printers in Latvia. And this is always a scary moment, isn't it? Because we think we're finished, but have we left anything? Any mistakes? Any typos? Any quotation marks that are missing? But I think
so we're still checking it at that stage, aren't we?
Yes, till the very last minute. But this book was particularly difficult because of the hand lettering. So your translation couldn't be changed anymore once we were finished with the hand lettering, because we couldn't go back and ask my intern at the time, Laura Gardner, to redo a whole page, because she actually hand lettered it with her non-writing hand. She's left-handed, but she used her right hand, which was very painful for her. But it was the only way for her to reach this effect of like a hand, the children's writing. Laura, were there any challenges while translating your book? I will unshare now.
There are always challenges. Some of the place names were tricky with this one. I remember that we talked about place names quite a bit. But with this one, it was particularly interesting in that it was originally written in Italian, but first published in Dutch. So we ended up with a version that combined the two in a way, because, as you know, I translate from Italian as well. So I was referring back to the original and then looking at the Dutch adaptation, which was very slightly different in places. And you're thinking, how did they make their decisions? What decisions do we want to make? And I remember there was a lot of discussion about that.
Do you have the Italian original text there? Could you maybe read that first page to us?
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's the same page that we were looking at in Dutch and in English. So it's la figlia dell'imperatore si chiamava Valentina ed era insopportabile. Aveva 390 paia di scarpe, 812 capelli, 50 cinture di coda di serpe, però più di tutto le piacevano gli uccelli.
Beautiful. Each language sounds so different. They're all beautiful. Laura, what tools do you use when you're translating?
It's very interesting, actually. When I started translating, I used to use a paper dictionary, a good old-fashioned paper dictionary. And when I wanted to look something up, it would take a while. And then I got a version that worked on my computer, which was just like a local version. But more recently, I've moved to an online version of the big Dutch dictionary, and that's really helpful. It's a Dutch dictionary. So what that means is it gives you the Dutch word and then a Dutch definition. But there's also another part of the program that has Dutch English translations and English Dutch translations. And you can cross-reference everything to check all of the different ways that the word has been used historically and in modern texts. So that's really helpful. That's probably one of my first ports of call. But also, I mean, the huge change that there has been is the way the internet has developed. There are so many references out there. And if you want to check, is this a good way to phrase things? Is this a common way to phrase things? I just go straight to the internet to check that out. Mm-hmm. And Wikipedia is fantastic for doing research. I mean, obviously, you want to back it up with something else as well, but it's a really good first port of call. Mm. I just don't know what I would have done as a translator 40, 50 years ago. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been. You'd have been going to the library all the time to take out books and check them out. But now the internet's there, so that's great.
When you think about the translators who translated the Bible years and years ago, you just can't comprehend how they managed to do that without
Such an undertaking.
any resources, just sitting in their monastery all by themselves. It's remarkable. We're very lucky to have all these online resources now. How long did it take you to translate The Golden Cage?
That's a tricky question because, well, you're a translator yourself, so you know that we don't concentrate on one book at a time. We'll do a little bit of this and then a little bit of something else and then a different project, just because you need to keep your mind fresh. So, the first translation, the first rough translation, that will probably only have taken me about a day doing it and then coming back and having another look. But the whole project, we're talking months, but in short, very concentrated bursts.
Exactly.
And, I'll have been working on novels in parallel with that. So projects that had a very different feel to them, something perhaps with 80,000 words in it, a big, thick book. And then, the picture book alongside it.
This is my final question for you. Why should we all read more books in translation?
We should all read more stories, full stop. But the fantastic thing is about books in translation, they bring other cultures to you. They bring stories from other cultures to you. We have many, many stories in English, of course, but when you read a book in translation, it tells you something about another language, another way of thinking, maybe other places, other people. And at the end of the day, great stories. We can always do with more great stories.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Laura. And if you've been watching our videos about the Golden Cage, please share them with your friends, and have a look at all the other videos for the other books in our European project, which you'll find on our website. Thank you for watching. Bye.